Also saying in a report to the inquiry that children were not ever at risk of severe disease from COVID. Well, Helen Goss is Scotland lead of the Long COVID Kids charity. Her daughter Anna has had the condition since 2020. Morning, Helen.
Morning. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much for coming on. What do you make of Dr Ashley Croft being involved in this scene setting meeting?
I was a bit baffled when I read the report, honestly. It's not really the best start to the inquiry. As you said, the report is supposed to set the scene and sort of give an overview of the evidence, but the literature cited in there isn't particularly balanced. There's some questionable things in there, and there are some statements in there that simply aren't true, as you said, that children were not ever at risk of severe disease. It's really confusing to read because, I mean, in the UK alone, 183 children have lost their lives to COVID-19. An estimated 3,000 children had suffered from paediatric multisystem inflammatory syndrome, or PIMS, which is the inflammatory response that can happen. Many thousands of kids have been hospitalised from COVID-19, and of course we've got an estimated 62,000 children now living with long COVID, like my daughter, which has left them chronically ill with varying degrees of disability. So, young people have been severely harmed and continue to be severely harmed by SARS-CoV-2. So I'm really keen to learn why Dr Croft believes the opposite.
Yeah, well, the Scottish COVID inquiry have told us that Dr Croft was commissioned for this report because of his knowledge of the context of COVID-19 in the UK, and it says his evidence will provide some scientific context for the work to follow, while it doesn't in any way preempt the eventual conclusions and recommendations the inquiry will make. Is there going to be a chance, do you know, for anyone to put questions to him today? What's the format of the situation?
So as core participants to the COVID inquiry, we did ask our solicitors and they contacted the inquiry team, and there's no opportunity today to ask questions. However, core participants have been given the opportunity to formally respond to the report and refute the inaccuracies at a later date. So I'm really grateful to them for making that clear.
And when the inquiry actually formally gets underway, what are you hoping that people will get out of that inquiry?
The truth. Quite simply.
Yeah, I think that
the narrative has been since the beginning of the pandemic that children are not at risk and they are not harmed and not to worry. But in my own household, there's living proof that that is not true. And there are so many thousands of children suffering every single day, and some of them have been for years. And there's no cure for long COVID at the moment. There's only a few treatments for symptoms. So the best thing to do is to avoid getting COVID-19 over and over again, because we know that it has cumulative damage. So you may not have got long COVID in your first, second and third infection, but you may get it in your fourth or your fifth or your sixth. And this is the kind of thing that we're hoping is going to come to light.
Tell us a bit about your daughter Anna then. What age is she and how is she doing at the moment?
She's not great right now, actually. Thanks for asking. Yeah, so she first got sick when she was 7, so she was primary 3, and now she's 10 and a half, and she's supposed to be going to primary 7, but she hasn't been able to get to school this entire time. And given the fluctuating nature of long COVID, at the moment she's quite severe, so she's been bedbound for 8 weeks. And we're waiting for some more treatment for her, some more medication. So it's difficult because you can't plan, you can't manage. There's no routine to life, It's just caring for her 24/7. And, we just really want to prevent this happening to other families.
Is that something that you're hoping that comes out of this inquiry too, is perhaps some sort of plan for long COVID in general in Scotland?
Yeah, I mean, the Scottish Government keeps saying that they've funded long COVID services in Scotland, but the funding really is tiny and they really need to make it more of a priority. I mean, I think the latest figure was 160 70,000 odd people in Scotland alone who are suffering from long COVID. That's a massive number of people who are out of work, out of school, who can't participate in life or society. And, you know, the longer we let SARS-CoV-2 run rampant through society, the more people are going to end up like us. And, you know, that's going to have a knock-on effect to all kinds of things. So I think the Scottish Government need to take it a lot more seriously than they are.
And in terms of, you know, we're talking about future planning for future pandemics. Is that something that you would like to happen? You talk about not wanting it to affect any other families in the way it has to yours.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues is that governments and the WHO across the world were very late in accepting that it was airborne transmission, and and then implementing infection control measures in society, in our healthcare services. And that's one of the things that comes up in the report as well. And I'd be really keen to make sure that the learning is up to date so that in the future we don't have this issue where we're having a 3-year debate about whether it's airborne or droplet spread.
Thank you very much for your time this morning, Helen. Helen Goss is from the Long COVID Kids charity. Her daughter Anna has had the condition since 2020.